Chapter 41. Dragon's Soul. Chaos C, 9th floor. The Eternal Flying Castle of Utopia, Avalon. New World. Overlord verse. In the bright expanse of the azure sky, a figure and a wolf pup teleported onto a floating island. Gazing at the beautiful castle, Kai, now Morse, smiled. While Deicide leapt from his arms and dashed inside. The castle had no NPCs residing within it, as it was meant to be his personal space. Well, except Deicide, he mused, watching his pet disappear through the gates. Soon after, he followed him inside. Kai walked into a chamber, looking around as he admired the artistic beauty of the castle. All those extra hours we put into perfecting the minute details, was worth it, he mused. As he wandered through the halls, his eyes lingered on the paintings and pictures of Yggdrasil that adorned the walls. Eventually, he arrived at his personal workspace within the castle. The vast room stretched before him, lined with bookshelves filled with books and files regarding the guild base and about magic. At its center stood a massive wooden desk, paired with a chair that bordered on being classified as a throne. Beside it was a larger table, serving as a planning desk, while a sofa set was neatly arranged around a small center table at the side. Approaching the throne-like chair, Kai's gaze fell on the sizable picture of his guild base hung behind it. The picture stirred some old memories. He could still vividly recall the moment they had first cleared the dungeon and were done with the event raid, the excitement of event completion, and the moment they had been rewarded with this very base, followed by the theatrics of his old guildmates. A smile crept across his face as he reminisced about those days. Kai sighed, weighed down by the melancholic thoughts swirling in his mind. So, is this what my life ahead will be called? The melancholy of Kurenai Kai. He mused, idly playing with the words. The thought made him chuckle softly before shaking his head at his own butchering of great titles. Times have changed, I hadn't realized it before, but haven't I been making far too many dad jokes lately? And I'm not even a dad. Setting aside age, I don't even have a child, much less a lover. He turned silent, his face adorned with a resigned smile. The humor drained away, leaving behind only silence. He had, once again, succeeded in souring his own mood. Ha, no lover, or do I? I can't even say for certain anymore. But one thing I know for sure, there's no room or energy left in me. My desire for love, relationships, or anything that even remotely is related to it is non-existent as of this moment. Resolute, he leaned back in the throne-like chair, the faintest trace of a wry smile tugging at his lips. His path ahead was already mapped in his thoughts. He would rather prefer to go for a solo ride, in this accursed world, for the foreseeable future and what follows after, than anything else that could present itself, his mental capacity drained and exhausted. But Kai blinked, a faint smile tugging at his lips as memories of past experiences surfaced, amidst those inconveniences. Settling more comfortably into his chair, he leaned back, his head against the head support, his gaze fixed on the guild ring he wore, the very ring that he had equipped to teleport within the base. The sight tugged at his heartstrings, yet this time, he refused to be overwhelmed with useless emotions. Why am I like this? Why do I have this urge, to destroy this world, and perhaps, possible every other world out there, just from this sudden emotional turmoil? The thought settled in with a sour expression. He resigned himself to fate. He could no longer bring himself to care. His instincts as a world enemy gnawed at him, fueling volatile surges of emotion, far volatile than any markets he knew. The erratic rise and fall of his feelings unsettled him, and his mind kept circling back to the same conclusion: it must be tied to my race. Whether it was his existence as a demon of the abyss or as an ancient dragon from some fallen world, he couldn't reason away these destructive impulses for every dissatisfaction, no matter how much he tried. While the sovereign of original sins is a world enemy template from the world item fruit from the fallen world, my dragon template isn't tied to a world enemy, Kai muttered, fingers tapping the armrest as if pacing in thought. It came from the world item fallen Dreki's heart, the heart of an ancient dragon that once reigned as the sole god of a fallen world, until it was consumed by the world devourer. He leaned back, eyes narrowing, trying to piece together the puzzle with their combined effect of their respective lore. Reigned is the keyword here. He wasn't classified as a world enemy, but a being comparable to them. He could have even been the protector of that world against such threats, until the world devourer struck. His eyelids closed, as he turned contemplative. Fafnir was also powerful, yet he was neither a god, nor was he the strongest of his world. But this dragon, his lore implies of strength on a scale possibly, beyond most world enemies. As, there was only mention of his world that came earlier in World Devourer's path, before others that had endured long enough for players to reach. It is quite ambiguous to draw any conclusion. Kai exhaled, massaging his forehead with a wry smile. The supposed world of the ancient dragon could have been weak, or strong. With the sparse lore, it is quite difficult to figure out anything. Honestly, I should have fired the guy in charge of writing lore. He shook his head at his own mutter, half amused, half frustrated. Kai willed to activate his less than appraise world greater than upon himself, but failed. I hadn't expected it to work, but it was at least worth a try, he mused, a bit mixed in with frustration, thinking back to his character sheet. As he had purposefully avoided carrying any sort of system or console interface into the new world. Not after I painstakingly wrote at lengths, how my character is supposed to be supreme to a T. Exceeding all parameters and beyond logic, almost like the world devourer, and even beyond him in lore, he thought with a helpless smile. It was impossible to access World Devourer's stats or his character sheet, just like any other world enemy. It was just an impossible task, even with world items. At most, with a world item in possession, the game had let us partially gauge their level, but the same was not possible for the Devourer. And after all the lengths I went to, shaping my character to be treated in the same light, I couldn't allow any system, console or AI to appraise me either in this new world. Otherwise, it would all be for nothing. If a player console could read my character sheet, so what would stop a world item, or the chilling chaotic power I felt, from doing the same? World items that can grant wishes, could maybe make it possible for its user, but now, even world items are beneath my build. He sighed, shaking his head, helpless about the future. Anyway, what was that chaotic power I felt? Alongside it was something familiar, yet unknown at the same time. My body recognized it, but I couldn't. It disturbed my calm, while the chaos entwined with it was something else entirely. It sent a chill down my spine. Cautious, Kai grew more aware of the unknown world he had stepped into. It makes me wonder, are we really in the new world, or have we arrived somewhere else entirely? Abelian Hills. New World. The four-clan alliance had long dominated the middle region of the Abelian Hills, their rule remaining unchallenged. Any small tribe foolish enough to invade their land was wiped out without a trace. Within their secured territory, they had built a haven for their races, flourishing under the protection of their divine gate and the embrace of their supreme god. Presently, on the battlefield, the chief of the Griff, Adroveth, danced through enemy ranks with unmatched grace, his spear carving death through the bodies of demihuman orcs. Flesh parted at his strikes, and blood followed his every movement, lining up with bodies of orcs. One orc, pressing hard against the battered line of goat beastmen, lost his head in a flash. Adroveth did not linger at the scene, and continued, slaughtering several of the enemy's key warriors. He spread his wings and took to the skies. Hovering high above, he surveyed the battlefield with sharp eyes. When a sudden spear whizzed past him, grazing close enough that he avoided it only by tilting his body back in midair. All the time, his emotions remained indifferent towards the slaughter of his enemies, who dared to invade his homeland, the land of his supreme god. Adroveth was a genius, capable of wielding 14 martial arts simultaneously, a feat that surpassed not only most of his kind, but even the famous Turtle clan. Though the Turtles were famed across the hills for creating martial techniques, few among them could rival him. For Adroveth, who had long been hailed as one of the greatest prodigies of the four-clan alliance, his talent often spoken of in the same breath as Zolstrak, his fellow chief who could cast spells of the 5th tier. Yet, his comrade had already fallen, slain by the humans of a kingdom to the east, who had dared to invade their land. The action had angered him, where he had voted for the vengeance against the humans who killed his comrade, but with unprecedented invasion from the north, had occupied all his focus, and the alliance's resources. Leaving him, helpless against the humans, who had slain his comrade. It was an abnormal instance since the establishment of their alliance, for a chief to fall. Or for there to be continuous invasions from various tribes from the north, west and as well as from the humans in the east. It angered him beyond measure, the memory of those humans who had not only slain his comrade, but stolen his corpse. To defile the body of a child of the divine gate was not merely a crime, it was a blasphemy, an atrocity committed against their supreme lord himself. The thought had fueled him and the rest of the elders into rage, their resentment for the kingdom to the east growing stronger by the day. Together, they had buried the truth, concealing it even from Zolstrak's son, Zorak. Few knew it, but Zolstrak had achieved a breakthrough before his death. He had cast a 6th-tier spell, a feat that would have marked a new era for the Alliance. And yet, somehow, he had been brought down by mere humans. So, it baffled Adroveth how those humans could have bested his comrade. His rage, though far from those humans responsible for the blasphemous act, was now directed at the invading demihuman tribes. After all, he was supposed to be the strongest warrior of the four-clan alliance, he couldn't let others surpass him. So, it was not unexpected for him to dodge any of the stray arrows or projectiles with his reaction speed and reflexes. He remained hovering in the air, narrowing his eyes as he located the source of the projectile. All of it took place within a span of couple of seconds, when he dived in and plunged his spear into the bear tribe demihuman. With his experience, he hadn't faltered at the sight of the bear tribe, a tribe then with whom they were not at war with, and had gone for the kill. Though, it made him wonder about the increased attacks from the various tribes of the north. It had been a couple of days, and it was out of the ordinary for many tribes to invade their land simultaneously. Just when he was tired of the invasion, as he somewhat agreed with his comrades' plan to conquer the Abelian Hills for their supreme lord, he let out a laugh mid-thought, amused by the violent notion, for his race was majorly peace-seekers, but the continuous invasion was taking a toll on him. He unfurled his wings, spreading them wide, as he took off for the skies, when he felt a slight tremor coming from the direction of the city of Dor. Was there an attack? He pondered, worried for the city's situation. His mind raced with possibilities, seeking the cause of the sudden quake. He narrowed his eyes and was about to fly straight to the temple of the Supreme Lord, when he noticed a young griff approaching his direction. Spotting the young griff in the distance, he flew towards him without restraint, appearing before him with great speed, winds howling at his speed. Lord Adroveth, the young griff panicked at the sudden appearance of his lord. The young griff struggled to keep himself upright, the sudden gust from his lord's descent almost throwing him to the ground. His wings flapped clumsily, his eyes wide with shock at the overwhelming presence of Adroveth. Lord Adroveth, forgive me. The disturbance, at the temple, the young griff stammered, steadying himself as his feathers ruffled in the wind. The divine door, it has emitted a wave of powerful mana, and released a shockwave that shook the city. Adroveth's piercing gaze remained fixed on him, silent and calm as he listened to the report. The young griff, still quivering, barely found the courage to lift his head from the strong winds that nearly ripped his wings, only to feel another violent surge of wind press against his body. By the time he blinked, his lord was gone. Adroveth did not wait for the young griff to steady himself, and from the gist of information the young griff had conveyed to him, he could piece together the picture. The news wasn't pleasant nor unpleasant. It left him with more questions than he had answers. His mind raced, trying to find logic, as he linked his comrade's missing body and the sudden invasion to the divine door's reaction. It's either the supreme god, expressing his displeasure about the current affairs, or, it could be the sign of the divine door opening. He mused, when he turned silent, displeasured by the third possibility. It can also be caused by interference of some outside force, someone who wishes to harm the alliance. His mind was plagued with various scenarios, yet he remained clueless. All he could do was clear the situation on his side, and rush to the city of Dor, and the temple of the Supreme God, as soon as possible. The end. Chapter 42. Abelian Hills. New World, Present Time. Overlord verse. In the wide expanse of the dry valley, where countless sinkholes marred the land, Adroveth descended upon the enemy ranks like a storm. His spear carved through the bodies of the bear beastmen, splitting torsos and tearing limbs, leaving half-cut corpses strewn across the dirt. There was no hesitation in his movements, as he unleashed his prowess upon the invading tribe. His body glowed faintly with the overlay of many martial arts, as he invoked numerous martial arts simultaneously, dragging his body to the very limit that he could. The four-clan alliance had held their defenses with measured strength until now, the elders cautious, and unwilling to spend everything on the northern borders, by risking thinning the defense line everywhere else, or to have their resources exhausted. They remained cautious, using bare minimum of strength to defend the area. The death of the goat beastman chief, and the disgrace of his stolen body, weighed heavily upon them, and the thought of the humans' return kept them on the edge. The massacre was absolute one-sided, as rivers of blood flowed through the sinkholes. Waves of panic swept through the invaders, the cries of the dying echoing across the valley as their formation shattered. Fear overtook them, and the many tribes who had invaded their land, left with hopelessness, as they now scrambled in desperation, abandoning the battlefield. Adroveth hovered above the carnage, eyes narrowed, watching the chaos unfold from the various invading tribes fleeing. It was then another figure descended to the air beside him. A griff clad in ornate armor, crafted by the dark dwarves, etched with numerous runes, flapped his wings to keep his eye level with his chief. The armor, grand and formidable as it was, still paled in comparison to the one worn by Adroveth. Adrovith remained gazing at the fleeing Demahuman tribes who had dared to invade the land of the supreme god, when the armored Griff bowed low to his chief, his wings folding slightly for a second. Lord Adrovith, the armored Griff spoke, his tone steady despite the lingering stench of blood rising from below. Adrovith's gaze did not shift from the battlefield. Rad, I am sure you felt the tremor from the city of Dor. The Griff in ornate armor nodded firmly. Yes, my lord. The shockwave rattled even the goat beastmen during their cleanup of orcs. A pulse of mana, strong enough to be felt this far. To think it came from the city of Dor. He muttered, before continuing. Is everything all right, my lord? The situation still remains unknown. Rad lowered his head. Then, what are your orders, my lord? Adrovith finally turned his gaze, his tone sharp and commanding. Everything here now falls to you. Clear the land of the invaders and secure the region. The battlefield is yours to command, Rad. I'll be returning to the city of Dor. The armored Griff bowed deeper, wings spread in acknowledgement. As you command. Before another word could be spoken, Adrovith's wings unfurled wide. With a single beat, the air cracked with force, and in the next instant, his form vanished into the distance, heading straight toward the city of Dor. The Temple of the Supreme Lord, the Omnipotent God. The Divine Hill. Abelian Hills. New World. The Golden Door had remained closed for centuries since it appeared in the Abelian Hills, leading to the formation of the Four-Clan Alliance. The temple built around it birthed a new religion in the New World. Its miracles had been the source of the Alliance's prowess, granting them the strength to rise above the other tribes of the Abelian Hills and claim their place upon the land. Their might rivaled, if not surpassed, many kingdoms on the continent. Now, the members of the Alliance waited with bated breath, gazing at the Divine Door. Adrovith, chief of the Griff tribe, Zeni, chief of the Dark Dwarves, and Ogorth, chief of the Turtle clan, were seated before it, each accompanied by the heirs of their tribes, Adravith, the young Griff, Zorak, the young goat beastman, and Zenith, the young dark dwarf. It had not been long since Ogorth took on the mantle of chieftain, and he had fathered a child only a week before, leading to his late arrival after the Divine Door released its burst of magic. Now he sat with the other elders of the council, who oversaw the various affairs of the Alliance, a system that functioned somewhat similar to that of the Dwarf Kingdom in the Azerlija Mountains. The Divine Door, in all its glory, opened, shocking the current occupants of the Temple of the Supreme Lord. A radiant golden light blinded their vision for a moment before they could glimpse the structure once more. Through the brilliance, they saw the silhouettes of three figures stepping forth from the door. As the golden radiance gradually dimmed, the features of the three figures became clearer. Yet, to them, the brilliance of their Supreme Lord remained far more divine and commanding, compelling all present to bow abruptly before the Divine Door. None dared to gaze directly upon the abode of their god. The three figures descended the steps that led from the platform, upon which the door to their guild base stood. Though the platform itself was nothing more than soil, carved out when the Alliance had dug into the earth to raise their temple, as they had been powerless to move the divine symbol of their Lord, and so built their divine sanctum, a temple to worship their Supreme Lord around it. The three guardians of Avalon were surprised by the sight before them. They had been commanded by their master to survey the surrounding land of their guild base, which had been brought into a different world after the fall of their previous universe and the world tree, Yggdrasil. Yet, to their expectations, when they stepped out of their guild base only to find weak demahumans bowing before them, it left them quite confused. The silence of the hall deepened, to only be broken by the faint sound of footsteps descending from the Divine Door. The chiefs of the Four-Clan Alliance, along with the rest occupants of the hall, kept their foreheads pressed against the floor, their breaths shallow, their bodies trembling under the strong oppressive aura of the three mysterious figures, descending from the Divine Door. Adrovith's wings quivered from fear and from awe, as he clenched his talons against the stone floor to steady himself. Beside him, Zeni pressed his hand firmly on the ground, to not lose his grip from the oppressive pressure of the three figures. Even the stoic Ogorth remained prostrate without a word. As the young heirs continued to fight their urge to give up, their bodies strained to remain steady. Yet even in that silence, the thoughts of the Alliance members ran wild. Had their years of prayers been answered? Had their God chosen to descend upon them at last, to grace them with his presence? None moved, awaiting the first word, the first command, the first sign that would confirm what their trembling hearts already believed. Yet, those who had glimpsed at the vague silhouette of three figures, chose to remain silent, from the powerful aura of the divine figures walking down the aisle, from the Divine Door's throne to the temple. Noticing their struggle, the long-robed mage, the floor guardian of Agartha and one of the children of Yggdrasil, world item Merlin rested his long staff on the floor, and tilted it slightly, his usual half-smile not leaving his face as he glanced at the bowed demihumans. With a soft sigh, he spoke, his voice calm yet carrying command. Now, perhaps it would be kinder if we did not suffocate them with our mana. Let them breathe. At his words, the dense aura receded somewhat, enough for the demihumans to stop trembling. Medea, standing just behind him, lowered her gaze, lips pressed thin in faint annoyance. She obeyed without question, pulling back the vast torrent of mana, though her contempt for those from outside Avalon remained prevalent. HMPH, fragile creatures, she muttered under her breath, her tone laced with distaste for those outside Avalon. Alucard, on the other hand, only chuckled, his wide grin revealing far too many teeth. He leaned slightly forward, his red coat swaying with the motion, amused by the pitiful sight before him. How quaint, he drawled, crimson eyes gleaming as if enjoying the discomfort of those bowing at their feet. His amused smile never left his face, as if reliving a certain past. Merlin spared him a side glance, then shook his head lightly, as if humoring a troublesome child. Regardless, our Lord asked us to survey the surrounding land, not terrify the residents of these lands. Let's proceed. Medea gave no answer, only folded her arms and kept her silence, while Alucard's smirk persisted as they turned their attention back to the temple grounds. Though, a thought remained in the minds of the guardians, as they guessed the identities of the ones prostrating before them. Despite the suffocating pressure that pressed on them lifted, giving them a moment of relief. Yet, they refused to gaze at the divine beings standing before them. Though doubts stemmed in their belief for three unknown divine beings to step out from the door, rather than their supreme god, they suppressed both doubt and curiosity. Awe-stricken by the three mysterious figures' prowess, they dared not rise. Fear had already taken root in their hearts, born from the crushing presence those beings exuded. To them the guardians were no less than divine beings, with their supposed power they emitted, they all couldn't be anything other than a divine being, a god. The guardians of Avalon, however, remained just as uncertain. For all their poise, they too were oblivious to the emotions and thoughts of the demi-humans, much less than identity. Merlin tilted his head, gaze sweeping across the prostrated demi-humans without a trace of hostility. His usual smiling eyes was evident, as the faintest smile tugged at his lips. The demihumans remained pressed to the ground, the silence stretching heavy in the temple hall. It was only when Adroveth, the Griff chief, slowly lifted his head that the others dared to follow. With Zeni, being the first to address the guardians of Avalon. Great ones, your arrival has been long awaited. The divine door has at last opened. Merlin's eyes narrowed with quiet curiosity, though his expression never lost its mild charm. He leaned slightly on his staff, as though more interested in watching than answering. Our arrival was long awaited, he mused, addressing the demi-humans, after sending a message to his fellow guardians of Avalon. Let's listen to their side of the events, before we make any decision. Greater than. Great ones, is it? He muttered, gazing at the dark dwarf, before continuing. I am sure, it must be tiring for you all to remain prostrated on the ground. Let's take it easy, shall we? He conveyed his wish, for those still prostrated. The demihumans lowered their heads once more at his words, their devotion only deepening, for the humble characteristics of one, who could possibly be a servant of their supreme god, that they had one-sided ly assumed with the fear of unknown. The silence was heavy once more, broken only by the rustle of feathers and faint click of armor. Adroveth, aiding his fellow chief, stepped forward and pressed his arm against the ground, lowering himself even further until his beak nearly touched the stone floor. We, the four-clan alliance, swear fealty to the supreme god who resides beyond the divine door. His voice wavered, but the conviction within it rang clear. Our blades, our blood, and our lives are his. We have sworn to serve the supreme god, from the day we were born, awaiting to be embraced by his divine aura. But please forgive us, for our lack of greeting, we were too shocked by this sudden blessing that the Lord has blessed us with, by gracing us with his divinity. One by one, the others followed. Zeni, the dark dwarf, pressed a gauntleted fist to the floor and bowed. The Turtle Clan chief Ogorth, slower and more ponderous, lowered his head as well. Even the young heirs of the alliance mirrored their elders without hesitation, bowing, as they gazed at the divine figures, despite the childish doubt they deliberated within their minds about the divine door. In their heart, they served and breathed every second of their life, with their utmost belief towards the supreme god. His divine symbol, that healed their wounds and worries in every situation, had stood with them throughout their life. Their devotion to the supreme god had what motivated them to better themselves. Medea's expression softened for the briefest instant, pondering on the possibility of those lowly demi-humans serving her master. With their swearing allegiance to her master, lessened her wariness of the demi-humans, and the same could be said for Alucard and Merlin. Though, the latter two still remained vigilant, as Alucard disregarded the demi-humans and concentrated on other possible external threats to their guild base, while Merlin communicated with the demi-humans. All three guardians of Avalon silently communicated through message and distributed the tasks among themselves. Merlin, ever the aloof mage, lowered his staff as he regarded the bowing demi-humans who had supposedly pledged their devotion to his master. Though countless questions swirled through his mind, he knew he had to steer the situation forward. He silently cued his fellow guardian, less than, Alucard, be sure to read someone's memory before we report back the situation other guardians. Greater than. Less than, I'll look into it. Greater than Alucard replied. Then, without so much as a backward glance, the guardians turned, their steps carrying them toward the crowd of demi-humans. The end. Chapter 43. The City of Dor. Abelian Hills. New World, Present Time. Overlord verse. The Temple of the Supreme Lord, the Omnipotent God. Within the temple's inner chamber, Merlin and Medea took their seats at a long stone table. The elders of the four-clan alliance remained kneeling as they pledged their loyalty once more. Merlin calmly surveyed the room and the supposed elders of the alliance, that inhabited the piece of land where their guild base's door had been brought to. The scene brought a smile on the flowery mage of Avalon, as he oversaw, what could be a religion, worshipping his master. The same could be said about Medea. To them, it was a new experience, as they brightened up on the idea of creating a religion for their master, giving it some thought, considering other ways they could showcase their devotion to their master. To Medea, it was expected of the ignorant creatures to worship her master. By their ignorant move, and by sheer luck and coincidence, the four-clan alliance had unknowingly gained approval for their existence, for occupying the land surrounding their guild base, from Medea and possibly the other two. They had at least managed to lessen the wariness and hostility of the guardians of Avalon, and had ignorantly planted a seed of religion in the hearts and minds of the guardians of Avalon. Their stance in the upcoming meeting of Avalon, elevated by a bit to possibly being painted in a fair or positive manner, when relayed to the other NPCs of Avalon. Meanwhile, Alucard lingered outside, sitting on an upper stair leading to the entrance of their guild base, or the Divine Door as the residents called it. His crimson eyes gleamed faintly in the well-lit room deep inside the temple. His gaze wandering through the various runes drawn across the room, their presence intrigued him, as he wondered about their purpose. While the Templar guard, Grith remained standing at the bottom of the stairs, standing guard to prevent any disturbance to the servant of the Supreme God, or to the Divine Door, as his duty demanded. While the elders had moved to a separate chamber for their conversation with the supposed servants of the Supreme God, leaving behind young heirs and the Templar guards outside. Their gazes drifted between the eternal symbol of their Supreme God and the silent, towering figure who guarded it. Alucard remained indifferent to their presence, already mapping the surrounding land with his vampire pets. It was then that Zorak, the young goat beastman heir, could no longer restrain himself. Shrugging off his friend's hands, he stepped forward, falling to his knees before Alucard, below the Divine Door. His forehead pressed against the stone floor, his voice quivering as he pleaded, Divine One. His voice cracked, but desperation forced the words out, as he struggled to utter every syllable, I beg of you. Please grant me justice. My father, a faithful servant of the Supreme God, was slain by the heretic humans who dared to trespass upon the Supreme God's land. They defiled our lands and our faith, they killed him. Please, I beg you, punish them, and restore honor to my father. I beg the Supreme God, to grant me justice against those wretched and heretic humans, who worship fake gods. The temple hall fell silent. Grith's eyes widened as he hastily stepped forward, grasping Zorak's shoulder to drag him back. Enough. Do not disturb the messenger of the Supreme God. His voice wavered, fearful of the retaliation from the servant of the Supreme God, for the transgression. Yet, deep beneath his tough exterior, he was kind and hopeful. He tried to shove the boy back into line, though Zorak resisted, bowing even lower as tears stained the dust beneath his forehead. For though Griath feared Zorak's recklessness, deep inside he prayed Alucard would take notice, that perhaps the Supreme God would extend his divine embrace to his follower. Grith's grip tightened, trying to restrain the boy, but his own heart wavered. If Alucard lent his hand, and if they could retrieve the goat beastman's chief's body, there was still a chance for resurrection, even if weakened. It was no longer simple rescue, it had become a matter of pride for the Alliance, for the humans had trespassed on their lands, the land of their supreme god. Those measly humans who worshipped fake gods, who knew death, had dared to invade their supreme god's abode. For now, they had relayed that Zolstrak's body had been destroyed completely, albeit to it being stolen. Alucard did not move at first. His crimson eyes regarded the boy prostrated before him, with coldness. Then, to the surprise of the young heirs and Grith, the man in crimson cloth disappeared and appeared before Zorak in a split second. The sudden appearance of the servant of the supreme god caused Grith's grip to loosen up, faltering as he stepped back, fearful. Then, slowly, Alucard crouched. His shadow stretched long across the stone as he leaned closer, the crimson in his gaze glowing faintly. The heirs gasped and shrank back, Grith tensed, torn between protecting the boy and fearing the insult of intervention. When Alucard spoke, his voice was a low murmur, as it sent a chill down their spines. So, your father lost to some humans. His lips curled into something that was not quite a smile. You wish to seek justice. Or vengeance, little boy. Zorak's voice hitched. Sweat dripped down his forehead, as he contemplated the choice and questioned the meaning behind the choice. Pondering on the implications of the question. Time's up, kiddo. Alucard smiled. You are unsure about your own path, yet you beg for justice to my master. He is the all-knowing, the Supreme Lord. He muttered, his grin widened, exposing teeth far too uncanny in the light. Indirectly confirming his position to those present inside the temple. Alucard reached forward, his gloved hand gripping Zorak's chin effortlessly, and stared deep into his eyes. As soon as the eye contact had been established, he had cast his magic silently, and was fed with information from Zorak's memories. He saw the four clan council gathered beneath the divine door on multiple occasions, their voices overlapping, praying to the divine door, to the supreme god, residing beyond it. Their daily life, the elders of the council, the history of their small nation. From his insecurities of lacking any talent in magic, to his grief that assaulted him the day he was informed about his father's demise. Memory extraction was quite easy and a simple process, compared to memory manipulation, which dealt with many complexities. Within moments, Alucard withdrew. I pity them, Alucard mused silently. Fifth tier magic, that is their limit. But it is interesting that they follow the same magic as us, while this runecraft is also an interesting discovery. Perhaps worth discussing later. He mused. His lips curved faintly as he repeated aloud, as though to weigh the boy against his own truth. So, you lost your father to some humans that invaded your land. His tone carried no sympathy, crimson light lingered in his gaze as he straightened, the boy collapsing forward onto all fours. Is it power you seek to be the next chief of your clan, or the power to avenge your father, little sheep? What is it that you chose, power or vengeance? Alucard spoke with uncaring voice, his expression indifferent. The boy froze. His body shook, yet no sound came forth. Seconds passed, unbearable in their silence. Then, in a trembling whisper, Zorak forced the words out. I want vengeance. Alucard tilted his head, studying the boy as though he were a curious insect. What if it was fate? And your father was destined to die? Would you still defy my master's wishes for vengeance? The young heirs and Grith were quite shocked by the line of question, and what the situation could lead to or imply. Zorak's breath hitched. He pressed his forehead harder into the ground, silent, as he muttered in frustration, it consuming all his resolve. Whichever pleases the supreme god, but I beg the supreme god, to give me chance at vengeance. Please help my father. The silence that followed was heavier than any explosion. Alucard chuckled softly, the sound hollow and unsettling. Good. His crimson gaze lingered on the boy as though burning the image into his memory. I shall remember this. Turning his back to the boy, he finally muttered. My master, though all-powerful and master of fate, prefers autonomy. Despite being the one who is above everything, and the origin of everything, he allows all creatures to make their own choice and decision. Before walking up the stairs, to guard the door. His vampire pets throughout the Avalon and now Mew pets spread surrounding the Abelian hills, as he was fed information from everywhere. Within the temple's inner chamber, Merlin and Medea remained seated, as the elders of the four-clan alliance remained kneeling as they pledged their loyalty once more, and after all of them had assembled in the chamber with them. The kneeling elders lowered their heads, waiting in silence. Their eyes darted with reverence and fear, uncertain if they were standing in the presence of gods or demons. But had this assurance, of being protected by their supreme god, their expectations, gave them anxiety. Merlin let the pause linger before rising slightly from his seat. I am Merlin, a humble servant of the Supreme Lord. And a floor guardian of Agartha, the abode of the Supreme Lord. Medea followed, I am Medea, likewise a simple servant of the Supreme Lord. The term, floor guardian, left the elders puzzled, but in their reverence they quickly reasoned that such a title must mean guardian of the dwelling where their god himself resided. The implications only deepened their awe, more so with learning the name of their god's abode. And the strength of the Supreme God's servants, left them in awe. We are grateful for the Supreme God to recognize our prayers, and bless us with his divinity, muttered the dark dwarf chief, Zeni. For the servants of the Supreme God to grace us with their presence, we are truly honored, added Griff, lowering his head. One by one, the rest echoed their words, a murmur of gratitude filling the chamber. Their happiness was deserved, now that their prayers had been finally answered. Their God had acknowledged their existence. Merlin inclined his head faintly, acknowledging their devotion. His gaze drifted across kneeling elders of the four-clan alliance. For now, he had a lot of information to play the scenario. The inhabitants surrounding their guild base already worshipped his master, and the door that led to Avalon, treating it as a divine symbol of his master. Now, contemplating the information he was presented with, he truly wondered what his master had tasked him with. Whatever was his master's grand plan, all he could do was play along and guide the mortals before him, and preach them about the greatness of his master. For, he was a simple immortal being, who was just a pawn in the plans of his master. He could never hope to comprehend his plans. Merlin's staff rested by his side as his soft voice broke the silence. I am truly impressed by your devotion to my master. He paused, eyeing everyone, before continuing. His pause brought the elders to their toes. And I am sure he is pleased with your devotion. But unlike my master, we both aren't all-knowing, so I am curious to learn about you, your people, and this kingdom of yours. I am sure there must have been a reason, as to why my master arranged for our meeting. Hearing him speak, the elders exchanged glances, nodding at his explanation. For they were pleased at being acknowledged by the servants of the Supreme God. The first to rise was a broad-shouldered figure, his dark skin gleaming under the torchlight. His beard was braided, and his eyes were sharp. I am Theodore, a dark dwarf, he said, bowing low. I hold the seat of the Lord of Blacksmith, at this elder council of the four-clan alliance. Next came a figure, who had same stature as the Lord of Blacksmith. I am Zeni, I hold the seat of the Lord of Runesmiths, and that of the chief of the Dark Dwarves. We are truly grateful for the Supreme God to bless us mortals with the knowledge of his divine runes. Merlin's eyes lingered a moment longer on Zeni, the faintest of smiles tugging at his lips. Runecraft, interesting indeed. I'll have to look into this runecraft. It's interesting as it is with Master being called God of Runecraft. Well, I do remember Lady Evernight Candidum calling Master that on one occasion. From behind, a stout hill dwarf shuffled forward, his robes marked with gold embroidery. His round face bore a practiced smile, though his eyes gleamed with faintest trace of caution. Rutal, a hill dwarf, I hold the seat of the Lord of Trade at this council, he introduced himself. All types of trades within the alliance and with those outside is handled by me, my lord. He muttered, bowing respectfully. Then came the tall figure of Griff, the Griff warrior. He stepped forward, helm tucked under his arm. His voice was deep, steady, and resolute. Gresta Griff, and the captain of 1st Unit of Templar Guards, I am here on behalf of my Lord Griff, the Lord of Templar Guards. We guard the city of Dor, and the temple of the Supreme God. We are the warriors, who have pledged the very purpose of our lives to the Supreme God. While I apologize for Lord Griff, as he is currently guarding the divine door, after the recent events, the situation is a bit tense. Medea nodded with satisfaction, for warriors offering themselves to her master's will was a fitting pledge. But was a bit disappointed by their strength. The next to step forward was a goat beastman, his curved horns were polished. So, was the leather garb he wore, layered with many runes. Zakor, a goat beastman, he said. Lord of the Hunt. And with our chief being killed by the humans to the east, I am also acting as the temporary representative for the Lord of the Magical Arts, the position of our previous chief. A hushed murmur followed as the oldest among those present was helped forward, a Griff whose feathers were faded and brittle with age, yet his eyes carried a profound gleam. He had been helped inside the chamber, to meet the servants of the Supreme God, from his usual chamber where he rested inside the temple. The old Griff spoke with rasped voice, I am Greater, the elder guardian of the city of Dor and the temple of the Supreme God. Oh, divine beings! This opportunity brings me great pleasure, to host the servants of the Supreme God himself. What a joy it is to live long enough to behold the day I saw the divine door open again. He muttered, shocking Merlin and Medea by his revelation, as he struggled to support himself, and was supported by Grest and by the chief of Griff, who rushed to support him. As the chief of Griff spoke on behalf of the old Griff. Divine ones, it was Lord Greater, who first found the divine door. The end. Chapter 44. The City of Dor. Abelian Hills. New World, Present Time. Overlord verse. The Temple of the Supreme Lord, the Omnipotent God. Merlin and Medea were quite shocked with the revelation by the old Griff, yet they maintained their calm, hiding it from the demi-humans before them. As they now gazed at the Greater with intrigue, toward the old Griff, as his race was called, mutter about the door to their guild base having been open in the past. But were quick to associate it with as a miracle of their master. Though, Merlin planned to discuss it with Albion, before raising the issue at the meeting of Guardians of Avalon, later. But as they watched the old Griff, they felt unease. It was as if, the old Griff could feel their mana. As if every method they had used to hide it, was exposed before him. This intrigued them both, as well as made them wary of the old Griff. Despite his dismissal strength, they wondered about the mysteries of this old Griff. Though, they had wondered about, why the old Griff had not been at the main hall, before the divine door, when they had entered inside the temple. But, looking at his condition, they could understand the reason. They put the thought to back of their mind, intrigued by the old Griff's strange prowess. After a pause, a massive turtle beastman stepped forward. His shell had runes and sigils inscribed on them. The sight surprised Merlin. The sight of runes being engraved on body, just made him more curious with this runecraft, as his inner demons fought, curious about the new form of magic. Ogorth, the lord of martial arts, and the chief of the turtle clan. I greet the divine ones. Another turtle rose after him. Lorson, he said, before continuing, I hold the seat of the lord of agriculture, divine ones. While Merlin was surprised and intrigued by the culture and civilization of this four-clan alliance and the mysterious runecraft they used. He was still amazed by the different style of greeting of different races and the way they addressed him and Medea. Bringing him out of his musing, came a younger Griff than Greater, but appeared a bit older than Grest. He wore a fine armor, comparable to Griff's, who had stood guard near the divine door, while unlike the two Griffs in the meeting chamber, Greater wore no armor. All their armors lined with many runes inscribed upon them. He stepped forward bowing, introducing himself. Adrovath, lord of military, and the chief of the Griff clan, divine ones. With Adrovath's words, the circle was complete. All eyes turned back to Merlin and Medea, waiting. Merlin gestured faintly, urging the elders to take their seats. As the chamber quieted, he wove an illusion spell, discreetly shielding his fellow guardian as she prepared to cast less than charm species greater than. Merlin and Medea were accompanied by the elders of council to the divine door, after their lengthy discussion. The conversation between Merlin, Medea and the elders of the council was used to detail the current situation and the way that the four-clan alliance functioned on. The elders went on lengths to express their devotion to the supreme god. From their surrounding location, to information about their neighboring nations were discussed. To the elders under charm species effect, they were very free with laying out their information and secrets to their thoughts. And by the end of the meeting, after Merlin and Medea had confirmed their loyalty, they undid their control spell. Now, Merlin, Medea and Alucard walked through the door, returning to their guild base. They found themselves in the outer garden of Avalon. Returning back to their home, brought a smile to their face. Through it majorly contributed to being in the presence of their master. Merlin exhaled softly, letting the quiet fragrance of Avalon's flowers wash over him. Their colors shimmered faintly in the light of the guild's inner moon, as the flying island was encased within an artificial dome, with its own artificial sky, while the petals shifted with the breeze under the moonlight. He turned, glancing between the two who had accompanied him on his mission. Alucard, Merlin's tone was calm, as he relayed his orders. Pass your findings to Medea. Once that is done, you can return to your post. The vampire bowed deeply, his crimson eyes glowing faintly as his cloak waved with the wind. As you command, Lord Merlin. I'll take care of it, before returning to my floor. Merlin then shifted his attention toward the woman, her eyes brimming with expectations for work to dedicate herself to the Supreme Lord, her master, to make herself useful to her master. Medea, take what Alucard provides and compile it into a proper report. We'll need it prepared for the meeting. Make use of your colleagues at the administration department to quicken the pace. Medea inclined her head, her voice steady and respectful. Yes, Lord Merlin. I shall see it arranged and made presentable. Satisfied, Merlin straightened slightly, letting his gaze sweep across both of them. Good. Once you've finished, deliver the report to me directly and keep copies ready to be shared with other guardians. I'll be meeting Albion before returning to Agartha. Now, you can leave. Both Medea and Alucard bowed again, as Merlin was a floor guardian, opposed to them, with Alucard being an area guardian and Medea, an NPC of administration department. Merlin ranked higher than them, in terms of ranking within the guild. While administration department was present on the same floor as the one Merlin guarded, just beside the palace of the Supreme Ones. Their creation was credited to the Supreme Ones, who created a building and a department in name to store and maintain the records of NPCs, summons of guild, traps and other nitty-gritty details of the guild. With a building built, they had proceeded with creating NPCs to supposedly manage the office. Now, their work also included maintaining contact between NPCs of different floors, as well keeping them informed about the news, and to handle all the paperwork of the guild. I'll get it done. Alucard replied, before stepping back. It shall be done. Medea followed his suit, already turning in her mind how best to organize the flood of information they had gathered. With that, the two dispersed, Alucard heading to Agartha, accompanying Medea to report their findings, before returning to his floor. Their steps faded, leaving Merlin alone, in the Garden of Avalon. He lingered a moment longer, the familiar tranquility of Avalon, easing his mind. It had been ages since he had stepped outside Agartha. He missed those days, when accompanied the Supreme Ones and his master to guild wars. Slowly, he began to walk along the stone paths, his hand brushing against the silver leaves of a tree nearby, as he cast multiple spells layering them one after another. Less than discern magic greater than. Less than detect life greater than. Less than map of Yggdrasil greater than. The spell overlaid itself upon the first, his unique loophole activating as the spells stacked their effects with one another. It was a unique loophole, though he did not think of it as such. His master had designed him to use it, in such manner. As the combination of a few racial classes with select skills and job classes of mage build, let the user stack multiple spells effects together. Now, he was back to using them, to find his fellow floor guardian of Avalon. His vision expanding to his surrounding, mapping every being in his vicinity, friend or foe, to detecting their HP, MP and size. Still works as intended, he thought, amused as always at the little trick his master had taught him or instructed him to use. Following the trail, he turned deeper into the greenery, passing under the shadows of towering trees whose roots curled into marble fountains. His pace slowed, gazing at the giant white dragon, the floor guardian of first floor, the Garden of Avalon. Albion, he murmured under his breath. So, you're here. Merlin, Albion greeted, his deep voice carrying through the quiet garden. It has been some time. Merlin inclined his head, a faint smile tugging at his lips. It has indeed. Merlin stepped closer, with him holding his long staff. We can chat at length later, Albion. It's a bit urgent. For now, I have a few questions for you. Tell me, was the door to Avalon opened after we arrived in this new world? Before we stepped outside. Albion remained silent for a moment, contemplating the question of his fellow floor guardian, before answering. No. Merlin's expression shifted, his usual composure faltered, and he considered raising the issue with his master and other guardians. His mind turned sharply, tracing through the sequence of events that had been relayed to him by those elders of the Four-Clan Alliance, after their guild door and guild base had descended into this new world. With a slight tilt of his head, his voice turned softer, as he continued. Then, were there any intruders? Anyone who dared set foot within Avalon after our arrival? Albion pondered silently, internally questioning the purpose of this question, before answering. No. Merlin exhaled quietly, as he grew wary of the situation. Then nothing unusual caught your notice after we arrived. Was there nothing different? He questioned, placing great importance to his words at the end. The great dragon paused, contemplative, before answering, his voice low. No. Not after, whatever it was that angered the Supreme Lord. His gaze drifted toward the endless night sky above the garden. I see. Merlin's tone dropped, uncharacteristically dormant. Then I'll need to investigate. Still, a soft chuckle escaped him, but it was humorless. If this anomaly is tied to our master's anger, that's troublesome. We can't have him burdened with grief or irritation. Not again. If not, what purpose do we serve? We can't risk anything that might drive him away, like the other Supreme Ones. Though we still are not aware about the cause for their departure. A heavy silence draped over the garden, broken only when Albion inclined his colossal head in agreement. We can't let trivial matters sour his mood. Though, unlike the players or supreme ones, the Supreme Lord is absolute and the one, who is beyond everything. Merlin hummed softly, thoughtful. True. Our master is the one who transcends everything. But I'll consult Orodes and Deicide, just to be on the safer side. If anyone could know about it, it will be those two. Still, if this is linked to that, then we'll need to tread carefully. His gaze lingered on the garden, his smile faint but strained. That will do, Albion rumbled, his tone softer now. But tell me, Merlin. What was it like, outside? How different is this world from the one we knew? Merlin's smile turned almost wistful, the faintest hint of amusement in his tone. Vastly different, yet oddly familiar. From there, their conversation flowed, as they shared and delved into their personal experience of this new world. With Merlin recounting his observation of the four-clan alliance, the races that made of the alliance and the religion that worshipped their master. The topic that excited them both, as they, despite their opinions, were on agreement for ignorant creatures to worship their master to redeem their meaningless existences. While Albion shared his accounts of his journey to space with his master. And his worry about the unknown power he felt, until their master's calm words had dispelled his fear. He was grateful towards their master, for enlightening them. The conversation proceeded forward in ways that Kai could have never imagined, or been prepared for. "Anne, I know that is a bit of a slow burn, but don't worry, I'll be picking up my pace by after the meeting of Guardians. As by then, I won't have many character introduction of world introduction chapters or parts, and we can go through the scenes with better or faster pace. The next chapter will be the meeting of Guardians of Avalon, and it should be wrapped up in one chapter, but could take 2 chapters at most. And after which, Kai will be stepping out in the world and his adventure in the new world would finally begin."